This section is to help you work out if your CraftBukkit Minecraft server is running mobarena or not. The first test you can do is by looking in your server log and then waiting for it to load, and here you can see the line 12.07.11 info mobarena v and the version number enabled. This means that the mobarena is currently loaded into CraftBukkit and is currently working. The next bit here will show you how to check in game whether mobarena is working. So here we are in game, and the way to check in game is if you type in /plugins. It will give you plugins and then the amount there are, and the fact mobarena is in green means that mobarena is currently enabled in game. This section of the video is just going to show you some of the extra commands that are in mobarena so you can go and play around with them yourself. I will be covering these in the advanced tutorial that will happen in the next video. As you can see, when you type in /mahelp, it brings up a list of commands, /ma-edit arena, ma-expand region, leave, etc, etc. These are all things that you can use to increase the opportunities that are in your mobarena to make it a better experience for your players. This section of the tutorial will help you set up your mobarena in game. So the first command that we need to type in is ma set region p1. This selects this corner here as one of the diagonal corners of the mobarena. The next thing we need to do is go over to the far corner on the diagonal and then type in the same command, ma set region p2. This then selects all of the area from that corner to this corner here to this corner over there as part of it. However, it is only currently a 1 high area, so what we need to do now is ma expand region 10 up. This will now encompass this spectator area above this corner. We also need to cover the floor as well, so we need to ma expand region 10 down. This now means that it covers the floor underneath here, and obviously we need to cover this lobby over here, so we need to ma expand region 10 out. This means that this lobby area is now covered. So this will be enough to have the area set up for the mobarena. Once this is set up, no mobs can spawn naturally inside this area, so that is quite a nice and helpful thing to happen. So you do not have to worry about lighting inside the arena itself. The next thing we need to do is ma set warp arena. This is the warp point for where you'll be teleported to once you are ready to battle. So that is going to be roughly the central point in the arena. The next thing we're going to do is set the spectator warp. Set warp spectator. So this block here will be where you're teleported to once you've either died or if you're going to spectate a game. And this will be the lobby warp. So that is obviously where your lobby is. In the lobby you need to make sure that you have an iron block that is what is used to make sure that you are ready, and it also needs to include all of the class names on signs on the top line as they are spelt in the config file. Each one of these contains various things that are going to be selected for the class when you select these signs. There is a config variable to choose whether you use the config file itself to dictate what the players get, or whether you use the chest underneath the sign to dictate what the player gets, but I will show you that in the next section. So what we need to do next, as we currently do not have any spawn areas for mobs, we need to use MA add spawn. These variables can be called anything, however I like calling them S1, 2, 3, etc. in order to make sure that I can find them nice and easily, and they are nice and easy to type in. So I'm just going to add in 3 spawn points to demonstrate. Ideally you need a spawn point every 16 blocks, as the algorithm that is used to spawn and mobs themselves will only target from 16 blocks away. If there is not a spawn within 16 blocks, then it will spawn everything at the closest possible spawn point that it can. Therefore it's obviously suggestible that you have one at least every 16 blocks. There is no upper limit on the amount of spawns in theory, and having more spawn points will not cause more mobs to spawn. The amount of mobs that will spawn is dictated by a mathematical function, which I will put a link to in the description of this video. So this is now your arena that has been set up, and it will now function as a working arena. This section of the video will look at the config file and some basic edits that you can do to it. So this is the config file. The version number of mobarena can always be found on the top line, and this wiki link here is incredibly helpful for you to read and will provide you with most of the knowledge that you need to know. The global settings are something that you generally do not need to fiddle with. The enabled is something that you generally want to keep to true, as this dictates whether the plugin is enabled. The allowed commands are something that you can add in, so the /list you're able to type in game whilst you're in the mob arena, and /pl you're also allowed to type in the mob arena. If there are any commands that you wish to allow players to use in the mob arena, you should add a comma after it here and type it in here. So for example, that will now add /test as an allowed command. Update notification is suggested to be true, as this will inform you when new versions of mobarena have been released. The classes are the classes that were put on the signs in game. As you can see, the items and armor are different to what I had selected in game. This is because I was using the chests underneath them to dictate what each player would get. However, you can use the items and armor here. However, it is not quite as adaptable as the chests in game. The chests in game can be anywhere up to 6 blocks beneath the sign that says the class, and also the chests cannot be opened once the mob arena is completely set up. Therefore it is completely safe to have them in the spawn like I had. However, these can be changed. They can either use the data name like diamond sword, or the data value like 309, which if I remember correctly is for iron boots. So these can be altered at any kind of given way. If you look at the potion is potion colon 8197, which is the data value of the potion itself, and if I remember correctly, this is a potion of healing colon and then the amount of potions you wish to give the player. This is the format that all potions have to be set up in, therefore it is slightly easier to do it in game, but I will post a link to how you can calculate what value the potion is in the description of this video. If we look into arenas, we can see our arena is called default because we only have one arena, and this is the first basic arena. It gives you the setting, which is it says the world it's in. This arena is enabled. It is protected as well, so you can't destroy blocks. There is no entry fee. This can be used in conjunction with Vault and other economy plugins to allow people to be charged when they go in, so that the rewards they get, they're basically risking their own money to try and get. The next option is clear wave before next, which means you have to kill every mob in a wave before the next wave will spawn. This can be useful if you find your players are deciding to camp in corners and just letting large amounts of waves to spawn, which obviously can be very damaging to a server. Clear boss before next is fairly self-explanatory. It's like clear wave, but it only happens on bosses. Lightning is a special effect that can happen on special waves. Auto equip armor means that any armor that you have, either in the chests or in the class, will automatically equip. This is generally set to true, and I would suggest leaving it there. Soft restore means that when you destroy blocks, that they will you can destroy blocks during the arena playtime, however they will come back at the end. Soft restore drops means the things that are destroyed will come back. Require empty inventory to join. If you set this to false, it will save the inventory to disk and then retrieve it when the player leaves. And the same for spectating. Hellhounds, you can set the dogs for players on fire. PvP enabled, that's fairly explanatory. Infight is fairly explanatory. Allow teleporting, I would generally set this to false unless you have a plugin that allows people to teleport around with special items, in which case you can allow this to true. Spectate on death is fairly self-explanatory. Auto respawn, fairly self-explanatory. Share items in arena, this dictates whether you can share items between classes in the arena. It can be very helpful to have this as true if you want a pure support class, maybe a class that has a stone sword and iron armor or something, so isn't particularly effective offensively but may have a ton of potions in order to help the team. Minimum maximum players, fairly self-explanatory. Max join distance, this can be used to dictate that you can only join it from a certain world. If you set this to a massive number, say 9 million, it means that you can join from 9 million blocks away, but you have to be in the same world as that mob arena to be able to join it. It can also set up with a lower value in order to mean that players can't use the mob arena warp to get away from fights that they are about to lose. So that is something that you might want to play around with. The first wave delay and wave interval are fairly self-explanatory. The final wave means that you can dictate that your mob arena only has 10 waves, only has 20 waves, etc. Monster limit dictates the amount of monsters that can spawn in the arena. Monster experience is obviously whether the monsters drop experience. Keep experience, food regen are all fairly self-explanatory. The lock food level means that your food will not drop while you're in the arena. So then obviously you can swap this around, and depending on how you feel that you want your arena to be played, you can set that to true or false. And the main thing in this config file is use class chests. If you set this to true, it will use the chests underneath the class signs, which is what I was using. If you set this to false, it will use the classes setup that you have at the top of the config file here. So the waves, you have a recurrent wave and single waves. The recurrent waves are something that will happen every 1 wave, every 2 waves, every 4 waves, however many you set up. You have default types and special types. Any type of wave can be either a recurrent or a single. Default waves will spawn a collection of the mobs that you specify. Special waves will spawn one of them, and a swarm wave will only spawn that type of monster, and the boss wave will only spawn that type of monster. So this default wave has a priority of 1. 1 is the lowest priority you can give anything. If something has a higher priority, it will always take priority over this, and if the priorities are equal, it generally takes the top of the waves with priority 1 or 2, or depending on what's equal. Frequency dictates how often this wave will happen. So this wave will happen every wave if possible, and the monsters, 10 does not dictate how many monsters will spawn, it dictates the probability. So in relation, these are all 10, so they'll all have equal chance. This will, if these values were all 1, it would be the same. If they were all 99, it would spawn exactly the same amount of monsters. If you change one of them to 1, then it means that it has a 10 times less likely chance to spawn than the others. Special, the monsters here, the numbers dictate the chance of just these things spawning. So if you wanted, say, blazes to spawn more than everything else, you put 100 here, and then it's 10 times more likely to spawn. Swarm, you have the type, which is obviously the swarm wave. This will happen on just wave 6, as this is just a single. The monster, there are going to be a load of slime spawning, and there's a low amount. The amount is a mathematical function, which will be on the link in the description of this video. The boss is fairly similar. The health is also a mathematical function, which I will link to. And the abilities, there is a list of abilities on the wiki, which I will link to as well. The rewards work in a very similar way to the class setup. However, they happen either every or after. If you want your arena just to be for fun and just to play around with, set the every and after number here, that I will be highlighting to 99, and then it's very unlikely that anyone's going to get to wave 99. If they do, then you can just set it to a higher number that is impossible to achieve. So these rewards here can be set to anything, either data values or data names, as they are here. So this can be customized, and it does also support economy rewards, which look like this. So that will give someone the chance of earning 100 of your currency once they've got to the third wave, and they'll earn it every 3 waves. The class limit is the amount of the certain class that you're allowed. So here, as you can see, -1 sets it to infinite. If you set it to 1, it means they can only have 1 of a certain class. So if you've got a really good support class, but you don't want like 1 tanky character and then 8 or 9 support classes that are just keeping that tanky character going, set the support classes to 2, maybe even 1. But obviously this is down to you and your own personal opinion. And the coordinate section, I would suggest not editing, as this contains all of the data values for all the spawn points, etc. So that is what the config file looks like. I hope you found this helpful, and if you have any problems, then feel free to contact us either in the comments of this video, or on the forums, or in the IRC chat, or open a ticket on Bukkit Dev, and we'll be sure to try and get back to you. We suggest that if you are having a problem, you make sure that you've looked through this video and you've checked that you've done everything correctly, as that would be a great help. We also would like you, if possible, to use the version number here at the top of your config file, so we know which version you're using, if you're using an old version or not. Also, if you could put the CraftBukkit number or the version title, that would also be a great help, as it will quite often help us finding bugs that you're having. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it around with anyone who you might think is helpful. And if you guys want to go and see the advanced video, it will be put in an annotation on the end of this video, which should be up on screen now. And thank you guys for watching, and subscribe if you want to see more.